Hello, friends. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to talk to those of you who are thinking about launching a podcast and building a content brand of your own. I've heard from enough of you and spoken with enough of you one-on-one about getting your own podcast started that I'm actually considering putting together a training on how to launch a podcast and build your personal brand. We're only going to actually do this, though, if there are enough people interested. So if you are interested in being part of a beta group for this training, where I would actually be personally coaching the group for free for 6 weeks, we do probably a weekly Zoom call, and I would share all of my secrets, all my tips and tricks from the things that I've learned from the past 3.5 years of building up the Millennial Mastermind brand. If you're interested, go to millennialmm.com/podcast training. There you can put your name and email and will be prompted to answer one simple question. And that's, what are your top 2 to 3 questions about launching a podcast in order to build a personal brand? Again, that's millennialmm.com/podcast training. I'll have that linked up in the show notes here. And just submit your name, your email, and the response to that one simple question. And if we get enough interest and you're one of the first 10 to submit your response, you'll be in for the free training led by me, and I'll follow up with some more details. So we're going to set a deadline to have this done by Friday, October 11th. That's this Friday. So get in there and submit your info now. I hope to see you guys there, and I hope you're part of it. But with that, please enjoy this episode with the inspirational Chris Patterson. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Millennial Mastermind. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Chris Patterson. Chris is the founder and CEO of Interchanges, a strategic digital marketing agency that has generated $1.4 billion of revenue for their clients over the past 19 years. Chris's company has worked with medium-sized businesses all the way up to Fortune 500 companies, with clients including Lamborghini, Palace Resorts, and Hard Rock Hotels. He is also the founder and head performance coach of Live Large Coaching. And really, Chris's true passion is helping people get from where they are in life to where they want to be. He has helped his students start successful businesses, get out of debt, improve their relationships, get promoted, believe in themselves, and take massive action towards their dreams of their lives. And massive action, I think, is a huge piece of that. We'll definitely talk about that. But Chris even offers a free training to help you find success. He calls it Blueprint for Success, Triple Your Revenue, Productivity, and Happiness. Chris, welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you, Brad. That was a very nice introduction. I appreciate it. I actually feel good about myself. My goodness.
Yeah. Well, I like to start it off with a mood boost and confidence booster.
Thank you. I need all the help I can get. That was great.
No, I'm actually fascinated to dive into your story and some of the things that you help coach people on and teach folks, because I think that, as we were talking about before we hit record here, just very well aligned with what you're putting out there now, especially on the coaching side, with the folks who may be tuning into this, but also just for me personally. I mean, I'm trying to figure out all of those things that you mentioned there in the intro. So one place that I love to start, because I'm fascinated by people's origin stories, really how they got started. So what got you interested in entrepreneurship? What did that journey look like for you to start your company 19 years ago?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. It was interesting because I've always kind of been an entrepreneur. I think my parents recognized it when I was just like 11, 12 years old. And I found out from the dry cleaners that for every wire hanger I could bring them, they would give me a nickel. And I went home that night, told my parents, and I was running up and down the apartment hallways, knocking on every door, filling up a grocery cart full of hangers. So I guess I was really, really young going, oh, wait, if I do a little work, I could make some money. And that's really what entrepreneurialism is, isn't it? It's finding a concept that's valuable and then turning that into revenue. And hopefully, if you're doing it right, everybody wins. So that was kind of my first inclination that I had the entrepreneurial bug. But, it was, in my teens, I kind of went astray, and in my early 20s, I was a mess. So I kind of look back now and think, man, what a loser I was. I was just I had all kinds of ideas and concepts that were not rooted in any kind of truth. I was selfish, self-absorbed. I didn't treat people right. I got fired from multiple jobs. And, the big turning point for me, which I think is important for the audience to know, is I met a gentleman by the name of Zig Ziglar. For you young people that do not know who he is, think of the biggest thought leaders you could on the planet. Tony Robbins, or maybe Ed Milet, or Grant Cardone. He was kind of like all of those guys, only better, in my opinion.
Yeah, Zig's name comes up a lot on this show.
He was just one of the most incredible human beings, and I was actually personally mentored by him in the late 90s when I lived in Texas.
Wow, that's amazing.
It changed everything about my life, and I went from being a complete loser, or what he calls a wandering generality, and then I became a meaningful specific. I was actually doing meaningful things with my life, and I had specificity with planning my days and getting myself out of a state of survival and into a state of success.
That's so cool. And how did you get linked up with Zig? Because, as you mentioned, he was a rock star, and I think that a lot of folks are going to be curious, like how that relationship came about.
Yeah, it's really amazing to me when I look back at it. I kind of consider it, a divine appointment. It was the most important meeting I ever had in my entire life. I was running health clubs in Plano, Texas. I had about 4 clubs that I was overseeing, the Q Sports clubs. We eventually sold them to 24-Hour Fitness. But one morning I was training my team, actually a lot of Ziglar principles, how to engage people and establish rapport and, find out their needs and serve their needs, all of those things. And it was right after the training, one of my employees ran into my office kind of in a panic. And he said, Chris, there's a guy here and you need to take him around the club and sell him a membership. And I looked at him and I said, I just spent 2 hours training you guys. Are you kidding me? That's your job. He goes, you don't understand. You don't understand. He couldn't get the words out. So he slid a driver's license across my desk. I looked down at it and read it, and it said, Zig Ziglar.
No way.
And I knew based on his emotion and reading this driver's license that it was legit, that the Zig Ziglar was in my health club. So first I got really nervous and my heart sank. And then the second thing that happened is I was like, okay, Patterson, rise up. You got to go sell Zig Ziglar, the greatest salesperson in the world, something right now.
No pressure.
No pressure. But you know what I did? I just kind of manned up and I was like, all right, I'm just going to follow my script. I'm just going to do exactly what I'm supposed to do. So I went out there, shook his hand, got to know him, engaged him, built some rapport, found out everything that he's trying to accomplish with his fitness. And then we ended up in the closing room. And when we ended up in the closing room where I'm trying to get his money, I decided to use a closing technique that he had taught me through his tapes and through his presentations. So it's a simple one. It's called the alternative choice close. So I opened up a binder, and on the left side, it said, Mr. Ziglar, if you'd like to join our club, you can pay monthly and it's only this much money. Or you can pay in full for 3 years and you can save yourself 15%. Which would you prefer? And it was that at that exact moment, he looked up, kind of threw his glasses at me, kind of a big pause. And then he said, son, you know who I am, don't you? And then I turned into a Justin Bieber fan. Wow, oh my gosh, yes, I know who you are. I love you so much. You changed my life. And blah, 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 blah. So it was incredible. And then, after I got myself together, he said, Chris, he said, you did a fine job. He said, let's go ahead and do the big one. I know you're going to get more commission and you deserve it. I said, thank you, Mr. Ziglar. I said, is there anything else I could serve you with? He said, actually, I really would love to have a personal trainer a few times a week. I said, Mr. Ziglar, I just had an idea. I said, I'll make you a deal. I said, I will personally train you 3 times a week on your physical fitness if you'll spend just 1 hour a week working on my mental fitness. And he kind of gave me this little smirk and he said, son, I like your style. And that's how I got the great Zig Ziglar to mentor me every Sunday for 12 months, for a year when I lived in Plano, Texas. And now fast forward, it's always been my passion to share his message and share his philosophies. Fast forward now, I've done very, very well in business. I've built up a 7-figure agency. We've generated millions and millions of dollars for ourselves and $1.4 billion for our clients. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the foundation that he gave me. So once I got my agency running itself, which has only been over the last several years, brought in the right team and the right leaders and everything else, and I've got people running it now, I was like, well, what do I really want to do with my life? So I got certified to be a Ziglar Legacy certified coach, trainer, speaker. And now I spend most of my days just helping people really discover who they want to be, what they want to do, and what they want to have. And then I show them how to get it.
I love it. I love it. And so I want to kind of go back a little bit to after that point where you met Zig, which is an incredible story. So thanks for sharing that. Really, truly does sound like a divine appointment. And then after that point was Interchanges, which is the company that you were just speaking of. Was that the first entrepreneurial venture, or were there a series?
I had a couple start and stop businesses when I was young. I used to throw dances for teenagers and charge everybody $5 to get in, and I was making some weekends $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. It was kind of crazy as an 18-year-old doing that.
Wow.
And that kind of fizzled out and died. And then I tried a car lot, and that failed miserably. So I tried a few things, but my first real significant business was Interchanges. I was actually working after the health club. I got recruited by America Online. I don't know if you remember AOL.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. That's the sound of success right there. Yeah. The annoying fax machine sound that finally gets you online. But I started working for AOL. When I got there, we had about 9 million members. By the time we left, I had about 38 million. And when I left, truth be told, I got fired. And it's crazy because I was considered the number one representative there out of 3,000 employees. I won the presidential award, I think 2 years in a row, maybe 3. I can't remember exactly. But I was, at the top of my game. I was killing it. I was loving this company, loving my job. And then, like often things just happen. I got my pink slip, and along with several other people. And I remember walking out and hitting the staircase. And every time I used to hit the staircase, I would ask myself, Patterson, did you give it everything you had today? And this day I hit the staircase and I'm like, gosh, I did give it everything I had, but what the heck, man? I just got let go from a job I love. And it was at that moment I decided, you know what? This must be a promotion. I'm not going to look at it as I got fired. I'm not going to look at it as a defeat. I'm not going to look at it as I've failed. And Zig so eloquently said, failure is an event. It's not a person. So I decided this is just an event in my life, and I am going to win, and I am going to conquer this challenge. And that's when I went home and started my marketing business out of my wife's dining room. The reason I say it was my wife's dining room, Brad, is because she kept on saying, Chris, you really got to get the heck out of my dining room. I eventually did. And that's, I went home and I that's how I started my company. I found a little piece of software online that had pre-made websites for restaurants and shoe stores and pizza places or whatever. And I would knock on doors and say, hey, I built you a website. Would you like to see it? And I would just type in their name and up popped a little pre-made website. And I figured I would do that until I found a real job. And here I am 19 years later, and I still haven't found one. So life is good.
Yeah. That's an awesome story. And so you mentioned then a few years ago, you started putting strategies in place with the business so that you could free yourself up from that. And you got to the point where you said, okay, well, now what do I want to do with my life? And you started doing coaching and really trying to make a larger impact on other people. What was it, do you think, that sparked that change in you, or that desire? Is that something that was always there? You just hadn't had the freedom to do it, or was there something that pushed you that way?
Great question. Well, first of all, I've been coaching people for a couple decades. Ever since I met Zig and all the learnings I had from him, I've been doing it and just helping as many people as I could. But it was probably about 5 years ago, I ended up having a nervous breakdown with my successful company. People are like, "What the heck are you all freaked out about?" Well, the reason I had a nervous breakdown is because there were so many things that I was doing in that company that I should not have been doing. And I had to go through a journey of figuring out who I really was. Often we can get caught up doing things that we have no business doing because it's really a weakness. And we're trying to improve that weakness when we really should just be doubling down on our strengths. So I had to go through and really know thyself. And that's actually one of the things that if people watch my free training, I'll give you guys the information at the end of this. But one of the 5 shifts that really turned things around for me was know thyself. So I had to go through a process to figure out who am I and what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses and where do I shine and where do people think I just have natural gifts and what are the things I hate doing? What are the things that are annoying? So I had to go through a whole process to figure that out. And once I did, I was like, you know what? I don't want to run this company anymore. There was just too many stresses day to day that I didn't want to deal with. So I brought in the right people and then elevated myself to a place where I was jobless again. Well, I had the revenue from the company coming in. That was great. But I didn't know what to do with myself. And that's when I got serious about coaching. And, it's been, I don't know, however many years now that I've been doing it professionally. But I just love taking people from a place of either survival. There's four stages, by the way, in most business people's lives. The first one is survival. That's usually where most of us start out. The second one is stability, getting ourselves into a stable place in life. Then if we're fortunate, success. And then last but not least is living a life of significance. So I love to take, especially millennials, young people through this process, teach them the foundations of success, and then help them get from either survival to stability or stability to success or success to significance.
Yeah, as you talk through those, they just make a lot of sense. And just thinking of the successful people that have graced us with their presence on this show and that I've studied, it seems to be I think you hit it on the head. That seems to be the journey that people go through. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably in those first 2 stages of either survival or stability. And I would probably classify myself maybe in the stability category, looking for that next success, that greater achievement, and then on to the significance. So let's maybe look at those. How do you work with younger people or clients to maybe take the step from, say, somebody's listening, they have a stable job, but they're interested in launching their own business and really creating a massive entrepreneurial success? What would you coach them on in that situation?
Really good question, Brad. It actually reminds me of one of my students. A young man named Jeremiah came to me about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years now. And he said, Chris, he said, I want to consider you for coaching. I said, why? He said, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you doing now? He goes, well, I've been in the military for 16 years. And I said, so why do you want to be an entrepreneur? He goes, I don't know. He goes, I think it's in me. I want to do it. He goes, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm not an entrepreneur, but maybe you can help me figure that out. So he hired me. And the first thing I told him is I said, let's go on a dual track strategy. She said, sure. What's that? Well, we're going to hustle and work on your business in the evenings or in your spare time on the weekends until it starts making a lot more money than what you're making in the military. Now, he's a pretty high-ranking official in the military, doing very well, up in his 6 figures and doing pretty well. Within a year, this young man who didn't believe he could become an entrepreneur, with my help, ended up writing a book, starting his company, getting his first clients, serving those clients, developing a system and a business model. And this last year, he made so much money. I think he's at about $250,000 in his first year, and now I think he's trending $300,000 in his second year. He ended up quitting the military last month.
Wow.
And I said, well, how does it feel? He goes, Chris, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I pinch myself every day. I can't believe this is happening. He goes, but I'm really not crazy. Now, the good news is for him, he's a young man, and assuming he continues following my foundation and the principles, he's probably end up being a 7-figure earner here eventually. So it's that is the joy of my heart, is to bring people out of that. Now, he was stable, but I brought him into a very successful place. And, that's the kind of thing I love to do.
So what you talked about there with Jeremiah is something I see a lot, where folks have those self-limiting beliefs that, they might have this inkling, this feeling inside of them that they want to be an entrepreneur. They want to go out and do something, but, they don't know that they're capable of that. So how would you help somebody, overcome those self-limiting beliefs if they say, I want to try this, but I just don't know that I have the ability to do it?
Yeah, actually, that's part of my training in the Success Blueprint you mentioned. By the way, I might as well just tell people, if you go to livelargeacademy.com, you can go through and watch the training for absolutely free. And then at the end of there is an offer if you want to meet with me and have a free 30-minute coaching session. Just go through the training, watch it, and then you'll be able to schedule with me if you do want a free 30-minute breakthrough session. So be more than happy to do that. But what you said is, self-limiting beliefs. I call those mind knots. All of us are running around with these mind knots in our head. Just imagine a rope and all tied up into a knot, and it's kind of stuck there. You know what I mean? Things are not flowing right, and knots cause problems. So one of the first things I do is just ask a series of questions with my students to really try to understand where their mind is at. Are they in a poverty mentality? Are they living in fear? Do they have self-doubt? If so, why? What's the root of all these things? And we kind of go through a process, during my coaching to figure that out. 9 times out of 10, I usually have multiple aha moments with my students where they're like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking the wrong way all these years. That's what my mom always taught me. So I thought she was always right. And not to blame the moms. I mean, all the moms blame, or have their best intentions for us, but sometimes they give us wrong advice.
Right.
And, it could be maybe not mom, maybe dad, maybe an uncle, maybe your family, maybe your friends. In fact, some of the closest people to us give us the worst advice, and they don't know any better. So, I've always tried to go upstream, and, I've been mentored by, as Zig Ziglar, and Ed Milet is a good friend. He's given me some great advice over the years, and spent time with Gary Vaynerchuk and all these other people. So you got to go uphill when you're trying to get yourself out of a situation. Talking to your sphere of influence is usually an absolute waste of time and sometimes damaging. So if you really want to get through your mind knots, find somebody that can help you untie those things.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I also would love to, you mentioned a few of the challenges that you had to overcome, having that nervous breakdown and having a few, attempted businesses earlier on in life before and getting let go from AOL. I love understanding successful entrepreneurs' mindset when it comes to overcoming challenges and facing quote unquote failures, because I think that it's an inevitability if you do decide to go down this path of entrepreneurship that there's going to be times where things just don't work out and you have to work through that and overcome it. So what is your perspective, or maybe there's a story it relates to where, when adversity strikes and a situation that could be perceived as a failure arises, what is your reaction to that?
It's interesting. When we go to a doctor and they test our reflexes, they take that little rubber hammer that looks like a triangle and they bounce it right off of our funny bone under our knee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if everything's working right, you get the knee-jerk reaction. I think that's where that term comes from. and the knee-jerk reaction is, you kick it out and it's positive. It's almost the same thing with our minds. Zig said something funny years ago. He said, everyone will agree and tell me that motivation doesn't last. He said, but then I like to remind them that neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. And, it's one of those things where we've got to develop our minds and develop our mindset on a daily basis, because it's not a matter of if, like you said, it's when. When is that shoe going to drop? And we don't live in fear and walk through life, wondering when that shoe's going to drop, but it's going to. So is our knee-jerk reaction at that point one of optimism, positivity, being creative, figuring a way out of this problem, being resourceful? Or do we let it control our emotions and put us into a sense of doubt and fear and stress and worry? Now, I lived that way for a very long time. I'm no superhuman. I'm just like anybody else out there. I'm just a regular guy. But I have taken it very seriously to get my mind in a place where when those problems happen, I can deal with them effectively and put the emotion aside. And I think that's really what all entrepreneurs either struggle with or are working towards to, get themselves a bulletproof mindset.
Yeah, I think it's important. And are there any, just to give some of our listeners some tactical advice on how they might get closer to that stage? And I could think of myself just in some own personal struggles of getting to that point where when the hard times do come, you're able to snap yourself immediately into a positive mindset and reframe that experience in a positive and empowering way. Are there any exercises or strategies that you would recommend that people can start to adopt that mindset?
There is. And by the way, if anyone wants to send me an email, my email is ceo@interchanges.com. Anybody that emails me, I'll be more than happy to send you a self-talk card. And what it was written by Ziegler, and it's basically just self-talk that you can do in the morning, take a couple minutes in the morning and a couple minutes at night. But what you're doing is you're telling your subconscious what you're going to believe for that day. And the more we can train our subconscious, the easier it gets to stay in a positive or optimistic state. So this self-talk card, it's also called a life-changing procedure. I used it every single day for months and months and months when Zig had taught me this. And I became more confident. I became more effective. I became more productive. I stopped procrastinating. I stopped doing all the kind of the negative things with my day, and really got myself into a much better position. And of course, I'll send one of these to you too, Brad. So
yeah, I would love that. Yeah, I'll definitely check. That's right up my alley.
Yeah.
So, Chris, obviously you've experienced a lot since that day that Zig walked into the fitness center there, and you had the opportunity to connect with him. And from changing your mindset to launching a business, growing a business, growing that business to the point where you could step away from it and start another business. You've really transformed your life and learned a lot, I'm sure, along the way. If you could hop in a time machine and go talk to that younger version of yourself, maybe right before you had met Zig, is there one piece of advice you would give yourself now, knowing everything that you've learned over the years?
You know what? I think there's probably 3 or 4 things that I would have given myself advice on. Hold on one second here. So, I think I already mentioned it to you, but you have to know yourself. You have to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are, because if you're operating in your weaknesses, and maybe you're a business owner, but you're operating in your weaknesses on a daily basis, it's going to die. It's going to fizzle out and not work. So either readjust yourself, recreate yourself, and get yourself in a much better position so that you're doing the things that you enjoy and are strengths. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Second thing is find somebody that can help you unravel those mind knots. I'm telling you, breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough with my coaching students has come from them coming to a realization that they've been thinking the wrong way. And maybe it's insecurities they have, maybe it's things that people have told them, maybe it's things they've perceived from the way life works. But you've got to find yourself in a position where you're operating with a bulletproof mindset. The other one that I think is kind of interesting is stop hustling. Well, that's contrarian.
Yeah. So you and Gary Vee get along great, right?
Gary Vee invited me to a Super Bowl party last year, and we had some interesting conversation, but this is just something that I disagree with him on. If you look at the people out there that are absolutely hustling all the time, it's very dangerous. 3/4 of Americans are experiencing symptoms related to stress in any given month right now. 77% of those are physical symptoms, and 73% of those are psychological symptoms. There was actually a study by, I think it was the French National Institute, and they said even just working a 10-hour day once a week increases your chances of a stroke by nearly 1/3.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, so okay, I'm going to work all day and I'm not going to sleep and I'm going to drink unbelievable amounts of coffee, so I only sleep 2 hours a night. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you're grinding down the most valuable thing that you have, which is your mind and your body. So if there's not a way to work smarter instead of harder, then you know what? I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had to constantly focus on how do I work smarter rather than harder. The last thing that I would really recommend, and I can actually give you some really good practical advice on this today. I think goal setting is probably the most underutilized or underappreciated task that you can do in business, period. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, if I didn't learn how to set goals and then learn how to achieve those goals, there's no way I'd be where I am today. So let me give your audience just 7 simple steps that you can start right now, today, with your day, and write these down. So let's say you want to, any goal, what it is, lose weight, get out of debt, save more money, get another job, whatever the goal is. I'm going to give you 7 steps. So write these down. Number 1, identify your goal. Once you've identified your goal, number 2 is write down in detail, what are the benefits to reaching this goal? 3rd is, what are the major obstacles? What are the mountains I'm going to have to climb to reach this goal? 4th, what skills or knowledge is going to be required to reach this goal? 5th, who are the individuals, groups, companies, and organizations to work with to reach this goal? 6th, what is my plan of action? Here's where you got to take step 1 and then write down step 2, step 3, step 4. But what is my plan of action to reach my goals? And then step 7, what is my completion date? If you can just follow that simple 7-step formula and really build it out and get serious about the different areas of your life, I just can't stress how important it is to, tell your subconscious the direction that you're going to go in and then make it happen. But most people have goals. I think the statistic, the national statistic, is like 80% of Americans don't have any goals, period. Scary and sad to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think 16% of people say they do have goals, but they're not written down. 3% have them written down, but they don't review them on a regular basis. And then just 1% of America actually has an exhaustive goal program that they study on a regular basis, and they're accomplishing their dreams. So guess who has all the money?
Yeah, there's certainly a correlation there. And, I recently I released a course on goal setting and vision setting. And I think you're exactly right. So often we talk about having goals and setting smart goals, and the concept sounds great, but a lot of times people just don't go through the process. And you talked about it earlier of just taking action, but they don't take the action, they don't go through the process. And I love your 7-step goal setting process here. And I encourage anybody to go through this and set aside, a Saturday and just work through, what is your number 1 goal that you want to achieve in whatever time frame that is important to you, the next year, call it. But getting this stuff on paper and really thinking through it can do so much, but you have to give yourself the time to do that, and you have to take the action to really outline this stuff.
I couldn't agree more. Brad's got it for sure.
So Chris, obviously we've mentioned a few resources here. You've got the livelargeacademy.com, where people can check out that free program that you offer, and even get linked up with you for a free 30-minute call. And then you dropped your email address in there that people can grab. Anywhere else you'd point people to find more information on you?
I mean, if you want to check out my LinkedIn, you can go on LinkedIn, type in Chris Patterson Interchanges. You'll find me there. On Instagram, you can type in Coach Chris Patterson. You can find my Instagram stuff. But really, I think the most valuable thing I can offer to your audience right now is just take my free training on the Success Blueprint. Just go to livelargeacademy.com. Take that training. If you like what I said, book an appointment with me, and let's work on your personal breakthrough.
I love it. And thank you for offering that to our listeners. I encourage you folks to check that out. And, when there's somebody who's been through the fire, the entrepreneurial fire like Chris has, and had the mentors that he has, and lived through the struggles and come out the other side and puts together free resources, I always recommend folks check those out, because obviously, like you mentioned earlier, that it's invaluable to have folks who are ahead of you in life and can look back and pull you forward to join them. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you sharing some of your wisdom here with us and taking the time to join us in the mastermind.
Well, my absolute pleasure, Brad. You're a fantastic interviewer. People, pay attention to this guy. He's going places.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Take care, Chris.
All right. See you now.